It appears that way, sir. And there's something else. We're detecting massive root growth under major cities. The underground networks are expanding at an impossible rate, connecting parks, gardens, even potted plants in office buildings. Dr. Sarah Martinez was no longer in Yellowstone. She'd been flown to a secure facility in Colorado, where teams of scientists were trying to understand what was happening to Earth's ecosystems. The underground bunker was filled with equipment monitoring everything from seismic activity to atmospheric changes. The fungal networks are growing exponentially, she explained to the assembled military and scientific personnel. What we're seeing is like, imagine if every tree, every plant, every patch of moss on Earth suddenly became part of a single, massive nervous system. A geologist named Dr. Rick Hoffman raised his hand. But that's impossible. Plants don't have nervous systems. Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing root networks under major cities. Not like animals do, but they have something else. Chemical signals, electrical impulses through their cell walls, complex interactions with soil fungi. We've known for years that forests can share resources and information. But this is different. This is like the entire planet is developing a brain. She zoomed in on New York City, where the display showed an intricate web of connections running beneath the streets, linking every tree in Central Park to houseplants in apartments to ivy growing on building walls. And it's not just plants, Sarah continued. We're detecting similar networking behavior in animal populations. Migratory birds are changing their flight patterns to form geometric shapes over alien ships. Insect colonies are abandoning their normal activities to coordinate attacks on alien ground forces. Even domestic animals are acting strangely. Dogs and cats are leading their owners away from areas where aliens are planning to land. General Chen leaned forward. Are you saying the planet is thinking? I'm saying the planet is defending itself, Sarah replied. And it's using every living thing as part of its defense system. The first major counterattack came at dawn on the third day of the invasion. The Kithra had established a base in the Nevada desert, thinking the barren landscape would be easier to control than the forested areas where they'd encountered resistance. They were wrong. What looked like empty desert was actually home to thousands of species of plants and animals, all adapted to survive in harsh conditions. The moment the alien base was fully operational, the desert struck back. Rattlesnakes emerged from the ground in coordinated waves, their venom somehow able to eat through the aliens' protective suits. Cactus plants launched their spines like missiles, the thorns guided by some unseen intelligence to find gaps in alien armor. Most dramatically, the sand itself began to move, forming whirlpools that swallowed alien vehicles and personnel. But the real shock came when the Joshua trees began to walk. The ancient desert plants, some over 1,000 years old, pulled their roots from the ground and began marching toward the alien base like an army of wooden soldiers. Their spiky branches crackled with electrical energy, and when they reached the base's force field, they simply absorbed the energy and turned it back against the aliens. Lieutenant Foster burst into the Situation Room where General Chen was coordinating the human resistance. "Sir, you need to see this. The Nevada base is gone." She activated the main screen, showing satellite footage of where the alien base had been. Now there was only desert, as if the base had never existed. The Joshua trees had returned to their original positions, looking like they'd never moved at all. "How many alien casualties?" Chen asked. "All of them, sir. Over 3,000 Kithra troops, plus their command staff. And sir, there's more. We're getting reports of similar attacks worldwide. A jungle in Brazil swallowed an entire alien fleet. The Alps triggered an avalanche that took out a mountain base. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is somehow interfering with alien underwater operations." Chen sat down heavily. "My God. The planet really is fighting back." Dr. Torres, the marine biologist, had been brought to the same facility as Sarah Martinez. His expertise in ocean ecosystems was crucial to understanding what was happening in Earth's waters. "The ocean is the key," he explained to the assembled team. 70% of our planet is water, and we've always underestimated how connected marine life really is. Whales can communicate across entire ocean basins. Dolphins have been observed working together in groups spanning thousands of miles. Fish migration patterns are coordinated on a global scale. He brought up a display showing ocean currents and marine life distribution. What we're seeing now is that coordination taken to an extreme. Every creature in the ocean is working together, from the smallest plankton to the largest whales. The aliens' underwater bases are being attacked by coordinated swarms of everything from jellyfish to great white sharks. Sarah nodded. It's the same thing we're seeing on land. The entire biosphere is acting as one organism. But how is it possible? Asked Dr. Hoffman. How can billions of individual creatures suddenly start working together? Tommy Walkabout had also been brought to the facility, his traditional knowledge proving invaluable in understanding what was happening. The elderly Aboriginal man sat quietly for a moment before speaking. The alien ships appeared over Earth's major cities on a Tuesday morning, their massive dark hulls blotting out the sun like storm clouds that would never pass. General Marcus Chin stood in the Pentagon's war room, watching the feeds from around the world as humanity's most advanced fighter jets bounced harmlessly off the invaders' shields. The beings calling themselves the Kithra had sent one simple message to every communication device on the planet: your species has been selected for harvest. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are useless. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. What the Kithra didn't know was that Earth had been listening. For 4.5 billion years, the planet had been watching, learning, and growing stronger. Every extinction event, every massive climate shift, every moment when life seemed impossible, Earth had been preparing. The trees whispered secrets through their root networks, the oceans carried messages in their currents, and deep beneath the surface, something ancient and patient had been waiting for the right moment to reveal that this blue marble floating in space was far from defenseless. Dr. Sarah Martinez had always felt different around plants. As a botanist working for the Environmental Protection Agency, she'd spent years studying how forests communicated through underground fungal networks. But lately, something had changed. The plants seemed more active, more aware. When she placed her hand on tree bark, she could almost swear she felt a pulse, like a heartbeat made of wood and sap. The morning the ships arrived, Sarah was in Yellowstone National Park, taking soil samples near the giant sequoias. The trees had been acting strange for weeks, their leaves rustling without wind, their roots growing in unusual patterns. She was bent over her equipment when the first ship appeared overhead, a black triangle the size of a city block. "Ma'am, you need to evacuate immediately," crackled her radio. It was her supervisor from EPA headquarters in Washington. "We've got unidentified aircraft over every major population center. This is not a drill." Sarah looked up at the ship hovering silently above the forest canopy. No sound, no exhaust, no sign of how something so massive could float in the air. But what caught her attention wasn't the ship, it was the trees. Every sequoia in the grove was leaning toward the ship, their massive trunks bending at impossible angles. The forest floor beneath her feet was vibrating, and she could hear something like a low humming coming from the roots themselves. "Sarah, did you hear me? Get out of there now!" She grabbed her radio. "Jim, something's happening here. The trees are..." The humming stopped. For a moment, the forest was completely silent. Then every tree in the grove straightened up at exactly the same time, their branches reaching toward the alien ship like fingers. The ship's hull began to glow with a sickly green light, and a beam shot down from its center, striking the largest sequoia. Sarah expected to see the ancient tree vaporized, but instead, the beam seemed to bounce off the bark and scatter into harmless sparks. "Impossible," she whispered. High above, the alien ship shuddered and began to list to one side, as if something had damaged its systems. The green light flickered and died. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Ocean, marine biologist Dr. Kevin Torres was experiencing his own impossible moment. His research vessel was studying whale migration patterns when the alien ships appeared. The 40-foot humpback whales his team had been tracking suddenly stopped their journey north and began forming a perfect circle in the water. "Have you ever seen behavior like this?" asked his research assistant, Jenny, pointing at the sonar readings. Kevin shook his head. "Never. It's like they're communicating with something." The whales began to sing, but not their usual complex melodies. This was different, a single, low note that seemed to resonate through the water and up into the air. Other whales appeared from all directions, adding their voices to the chorus. Within an hour, Kevin counted over 200 whales singing in perfect harmony. Above them, one of the alien ships had been scanning the ocean with some kind of energy beam. But as the whale song grew louder, the beam began to waver and distort. The ship's smooth flight became erratic, and it started losing altitude. "The whales," Kevin said, his voice filled with wonder. "They're jamming the ship's system somehow." On the other side of the world, in the Australian outback, Aboriginal elder Tommy Walkabout was having a vision that had been coming to him in dreams for months. He sat cross-legged on red earth that had been sacred to his people for 60,000 years, watching an alien ship hover over Uluru, the massive rock formation that white people called Ayers Rock. The ship was trying to land on the sacred site, but every time it got close, the ground would shake and the ship would be thrown back into the air. Tommy could feel the land itself rejecting the invaders, the same way a body fights off an infection. "The old country is waking up," he said to his grandson, who was filming everything on his phone. "She's been sleeping for a long time, but now she remembers how to fight." The ship tried once more to land, sending down mechanical probes that looked like giant spiders. But the moment they touched the rock, Uluru began to glow with a soft, warm light. The mechanical spiders sparked and fell silent, their metal legs curling up like real spiders that had been killed by poison. Back in Washington, General Chin was getting reports that made no sense. Fighter jets were being shot down by the hundreds, but the alien ships were also experiencing system failures wherever they encountered large concentrations of plant and animal life. Forests were somehow deflecting energy weapons. Whales were interfering with alien communications. Even stranger, there were reports of the ground itself opening up to swallow alien landing craft. "Sir," said Lieutenant Amanda Foster, Chen's aide, "we're getting similar reports from every continent. The aliens are having trouble wherever they encounter what our scientists are calling biologically dense areas." Chen rubbed his temples. "Are you telling me that trees and whales are doing more damage to these invaders than our entire military?" "My people have always known that the land is alive," he said. "We never thought of ourselves as separate from it. Every rock, every tree, every animal, all part of the same living system. The white man's science is just now catching up to what we've known for thousands of years." He gestured to the displays showing global biological activity. "What you're seeing isn't new. It's just that the Earth is finally showing its true face. When something threatens the whole system, the system fights back." General Chen was skeptical. "You're talking about the planet like it's conscious, like it can think and plan." Tommy smiled. "Does it matter what you call it? Intelligence, instinct, natural selection taken to its logical conclusion, the result is the same. The Earth is protecting itself, and us along with it." The turning point came on the 5th day of the invasion. The Kithra commander, a being called Thexforth, had grown frustrated with the unexpected resistance. Their species had conquered hundreds of worlds, and never before had they encountered a planet that could fight back like this. "Increase power to maximum," Thexforth commanded from the bridge of the flagship hovering over the Pacific Ocean. "If we cannot control the surface, we will sterilize it completely." The massive ship began to glow with energy as it prepared to unleash a weapon capable of burning away all life on Earth's surface. Similar ships over other continents began charging their own planet-killer weapons. But the Earth was ready. Every tree on the planet began to shine with a soft, green light. The ocean's surface started to glow blue-white. Mountains themselves seemed to pulse with inner fire. Even the air began to shimmer as if filled with invisible energy. Dr. Martinez watched from the facility's observation deck as the forest outside began to transform. The trees were growing taller, their branches reaching toward the sky like living antennas. Their leaves had turned from green to silver, and they were vibrating at frequencies that made the air itself hum with power. "It's beautiful," she whispered. High above, the alien ships fired their weapons. Beams of pure destruction lanced down from orbit, each one capable of turning a city into glass. But the beams never reached the ground. The trees caught them. Every photon of destructive energy was absorbed by the silver leaves and channeled down through the trunks, into the root networks, and across the entire planet. The weapon energy that should have destroyed all life instead became part of the Earth's own power grid. And then the planet struck back. From every forest, every jungle, every patch of grassland, beams of green light shot upward toward the alien ships. The energy was the same as what the aliens had fired, but transformed, purified, and amplified by 4 billion years of evolutionary wisdom. The alien ships' shields, designed to protect against any known weapon, were useless against their own power turned back on them. One by one, the massive vessels began to fall from the sky, their hulls cracking like eggshells as Earth's energy tore through their systems. Thexforth watched in horror as his fleet was destroyed by an enemy they couldn't even understand. "How is this possible?" he demanded. This world showed no signs of advanced intelligence. His science officer, trembling with fear, replied, "Commander, I think we may have made a fundamental error. We assumed intelligence had to be centralized, like ours. But this planet, the intelligence is distributed through every living thing. The entire biosphere is a single, massive mind. That's impossible. Sir, our deep scans are detecting quantum entanglement between organisms across the entire planet. Every tree, every animal, every microorganism is connected at the subatomic level. We're not fighting a species, we're fighting an entire world that has achieved collective consciousness." The flagship shuddered as another green beam struck its hull. Systems were failing throughout the ship, and the crew was beginning to panic. "Retreat!" Thexforth commanded. "All ships, retreat to the outer system." But it was too late. The planet's attack intensified, and the beams of green light began to merge into a single, massive column of energy that rose from Earth's surface like a pillar connecting the ground to space. The remaining alien ships were caught in this pillar and simply dissolved, their matter broken down into component atoms and scattered harmlessly into the void. In the underground facility, the assembled humans watched in awe as the last alien ship disappeared in a flash of green light. The monitors showed that the invasion was over, not a single Kithra vessel remained in Earth's solar system. "We won," Lieutenant Foster said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We actually won." But Dr. Martinez was looking at something else on her instruments. "The energy levels are still rising," she said. "The planet isn't stopping." Outside, the trees were growing even brighter, and the humming in the air was becoming a roar. The very ground beneath their feet was vibrating with power. Tommy Walkabout placed his hand on the wall of the facility, feeling the pulse of the earth through the concrete and steel. "She's not just defending anymore," he said quietly. "She's making sure they can never come back." Through the facility's communications array, they could hear signals being broadcast into space, not from any human transmitter, but from the planet itself. The Earth was sending a message to every corner of the galaxy, a warning that would travel faster than light through quantum channels they barely understood. The message was simple and clear: this world is defended. This world is aware. This world will protect itself and all who live upon it. Do not return. As the hours passed, the green light gradually faded, and the trees returned to their normal appearance. The ocean's glow dimmed, and the mountains stopped their pulsing. But everyone could feel that something fundamental had changed. The planet felt more alive, more aware than it ever had before. Dr. Martinez was the first to notice the new growth. Within days of the invasion's end, plants everywhere were growing faster and stronger than ever before. Deserts were turning green as hardy plants spread across previously barren ground. The ocean was cleaner, with marine life populations exploding in number and diversity. "It's like the planet is healing itself," she reported to the assembled world leaders who had gathered to try to understand what had happened. "The same energy that destroyed the alien ships is now being used to repair centuries of environmental damage." The changes weren't limited to plants and animals. Humans began to report heightened senses, better health, and an increased ability to understand the natural world around them. Children seemed especially affected, with many developing an almost telepathic connection to plants and animals. Dr. Torres documented how marine life was now actively helping human researchers, with whales and dolphins providing information about ocean currents and climate patterns. Fish were leading boats away from dangerous storms, and even tiny organisms were cooperating in ways that accelerated scientific discovery. We're not just living on Earth anymore, Torres explained. We're part of it in a way we never were before. The planet has adopted us into its immune system. General Chen, now leading a new international organization dedicated to understanding Earth's transformation, was amazed by the changes in military technology. Soldiers reported that their equipment worked better in natural environments, as if the planet itself was enhancing their capabilities. Weapons designed for defense were more effective, while those meant for aggression often failed to function properly. It's like the Earth is making us better versions of ourselves, he said during a briefing. More capable of protecting the planet, less capable of destroying it. 6 months after the invasion, Tommy Walkabout stood again on the red earth of the Australian outback, but now he wasn't alone. People from around the world were coming to sacred sites, drawn by something they couldn't quite explain. They came to listen, to learn, and to connect with the living planet in ways their ancestors had once known but modern civilization had forgotten. The Earth is teaching us, Tommy said to a group of visitors from every continent. She's showing us how to live as part of the system instead of separate from it. This is how it was always meant to be. The alien invasion had lasted only 5 days, but it had changed everything. Humanity had learned that they were not alone in the universe, but more importantly, they had learned that they had never been alone on their own planet. The Earth itself was alive, aware, and willing to protect all life within its embrace. As the sun set over Uluru, painting the sacred rock in shades of red and gold, Tommy felt the planet's pulse beneath his feet, steady, strong, and eternal. The Earth had awakened, and it would never sleep again. In space, far beyond the orbit of Pluto, sensors detected the quantum signatures of approaching ships. But these weren't invaders, they were visitors, drawn by Earth's message of awareness and strength. Species from across the galaxy were coming to meet the world that had achieved something thought impossible, a planet where every living thing was connected in perfect harmony. The age of Earth's isolation was over. The age of its true destiny was about to begin. And in forests and oceans, in mountains and deserts, in cities and towns around the world, the planet continued to pulse with life and consciousness, ready to protect its children and welcome new friends among the stars. The defenders of Earth were not armies or weapons, they were every tree, every flower, every creature that called the blue marble home. They had said Earth was defenseless, but they were wrong. Earth was the strongest fortress in the galaxy, defended by the power of life itself. 3 years after the Kithra invasion, Dr. Sarah Martinez stood in what had once been the Pentagon's Situation Room, now transformed into something that looked more like a greenhouse than a military command center. Vines wrapped around computer terminals, their leaves glowing softly with bioluminescent displays that showed data streams from across the planet. The air hummed with the quiet energy of photosynthesis and the subtle electrical fields generated by root networks that now extended through every major city on Earth. "They're here," announced Lieutenant Foster, though she was no longer a lieutenant. Military ranks had become largely meaningless when the planet itself had become humanity's ultimate commanding officer. She gestured toward the main display, which was now a living wall of interconnected plant matter that could show images with startling clarity. The display revealed a sight that would have terrified humanity just a few years earlier, hundreds of alien vessels approaching Earth's solar system. But these ships moved slowly, almost hesitantly, broadcasting peaceful intentions on frequencies that the Earth itself could understand and translate. General Chen, his hair now completely white but his eyes brighter than they'd been in decades, studied the approaching fleet. "What does she say about them?" he asked, speaking to the room itself. The walls pulsed with a warm, green light, and somehow everyone in the room understood the message: these ones come in peace. They seek knowledge, not conquest. The harmony calls to them. Sarah placed her hand on the nearest vine, feeling the planet's vast consciousness brush against her mind. The sensation was indescribable, like touching the thoughts of a being so vast and ancient that human language had no words for it. Through this connection, she could sense the intentions of the approaching visitors: curiosity, wonder, and something that might have been hope. 17 different species, Sarah reported, her consciousness still partially merged with the planetary network. They've been monitoring our quantum broadcasts for the past 2 years. They're calling Earth something that translates roughly as the awakened world or the unified sphere. We're apparently the first planet they've encountered where the entire biosphere achieved collective consciousness. Dr. Torres, now serving as Earth's primary liaison for oceanic intelligence, emerged from a tidal pool that had been installed in the corner of the room. His skin glistened with a thin layer of symbiotic algae that helped him interface more directly with marine life. "The whales are singing greeting songs," he reported. "Songs they've never sung before, melodies designed to welcome visitors from other worlds. The entire ocean is preparing for a celebration." The transformation of humanity over the past 3 years had been remarkable. Children born after the awakening were different, more intuitive, more connected to the natural world, capable of communicating with plants and animals in ways that seemed magical to their parents. Adults had changed too, their minds slowly adapting to the new reality of living as part of a planetary consciousness. Tommy Walkabout appeared on the display, broadcasting from Uluru, where he now served as one of Earth's primary ambassadors. The ancient Aboriginal elder had become something of a prophet, helping humanity understand their new role as conscious participants in the planet's immune system. "The old stories my people told about the Dreamtime," Tommy said, his voice carrying across continents through the root networks, "they weren't just stories. They were memories of how things used to be, before humans forgot how to listen to the land. The invasion didn't just save us from the aliens, it helped us remember who we really are." The first alien ship to enter Earth's atmosphere was a crystalline vessel from a species that called themselves the Veiltar. They were beings of pure energy who had learned to manipulate matter on a quantum level, and they were fascinated by Earth's unique achievement. Their ship settled gently into the Atlantic Ocean, where a delegation of whales and dolphins immediately surrounded it in a welcoming formation. Sarah found herself selected as one of the human representatives for first contact, though she suspected the choice had been made by the Earth itself rather than any human authority. She stood on a floating platform that had grown from modified kelp, surrounded by marine life that sang in harmonious welcome. The Veiltar representative emerged from their ship as a shimmering column of light that gradually took on a vaguely humanoid form. When it spoke, its voice resonated through water, air, and the quantum fields that connected all life on Earth. "We greet the awakened world," the being said, its words somehow understood by every creature within miles. "We have traveled far to witness the miracle you have achieved. Your planet has done something we thought impossible. You have unified individual consciousness with collective intelligence while maintaining the diversity that makes life beautiful." Sarah felt the Earth's vast mind touch hers, providing her with the words to respond. "We welcome you, travelers from distant stars. Our planet extends its greeting and its gratitude. We have learned that consciousness is not diminished by sharing, but amplified." Over the following weeks, more alien species arrived, each drawn by Earth's unique achievement. The Kethmori were a fundal intelligence that existed as vast networks spanning multiple worlds. They were amazed to discover that Earth had achieved something similar using a completely different evolutionary path. The Zephyrians were aerial beings who lived in the atmospheres of gas giants. They marveled at how Earth's atmosphere itself had become conscious, responsive to the needs of every breathing creature. But perhaps the most surprising visitors were the surviving Kithra. Thexforth's flagship approached Earth's moon under a flag of truce, broadcasting apologies and requests for permission to enter the system. The Kithra commander who had once threatened to harvest humanity now came seeking something entirely different: understanding. The meeting took place in Antarctica, on a plateau that had been transformed into a garden of ice-resistant plants that glowed with soft, welcoming light. Thexforth, his armor replaced by simple robes, stood before representatives of Earth's awakened consciousness. "We have spent years studying what happened here," the former Kithra commander said, his translator working to convey emotions that human language barely had words for. "My species has conquered over 800 worlds, but we have never encountered anything like what you achieved. We came here thinking we were the pinnacle of evolution, a species that had transcended individual limitations through technology and collective will. But you had shown us something far greater." Tommy Walkabout, now ancient but more vital than ever, responded with words that seemed to come from the Earth itself. "Your people sought to conquer others to become stronger. Our planet chose to nurture all life to become wiser. The difference is not in our capabilities, but in our purpose." Thexforth knelt in the alien equivalent of humility. We ask not for forgiveness, our crimes are too great for that. We ask for teaching. Show us how to transform our worlds from conquered territories into living partners. Help us learn what we should have discovered long ago. 5 years after first contact, the solar system had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a multi-species research station dedicated to understanding and spreading planetary consciousness. Mars had been selected as the primary research facility, its surface now covered with hybrid ecosystems that combined Earth life with organisms from dozens of other worlds. Dr. Martinez stood in the Martian biodome, watching as Earth-born trees grew alongside crystalline organisms from the Veiltar homeworld and fungal networks introduced by the Keth Mori. The red planet was slowly turning green as its atmosphere was modified by the combined efforts of multiple species working in harmony. "The terraforming is proceeding faster than we ever imagined possible," she reported to the Interplanetary Council, a governing body that included representatives from 23 different worlds. When ecosystems from different planets learn to work together, they achieve capabilities that none of them possessed alone. The transformation of Mars was more than just an environmental project, it was a proof of concept. If life from multiple worlds could achieve consciousness as a unified system, it might be possible to awaken entire galaxies to the potential of cooperative existence. Back on Earth, the changes continued to accelerate. Cities had become indistinguishable from forests, with buildings that grew rather than being constructed, transportation systems that operated through root networks and atmospheric currents, and energy systems powered by the planet's own bioelectric fields. Crime had virtually disappeared, not through enforcement, but because the planetary consciousness made it impossible for individuals to harm others without feeling the pain themselves. Children born into this new world were remarkable beings, capable of communicating with any form of life they encountered. They served as natural ambassadors, helping newly arrived alien species integrate into Earth's consciousness network. Some could photosynthesize like plants, others could echolocate like dolphins, and a few displayed abilities that seemed to transcend the normal limitations of biological existence. Dr. Torres had established underwater cities where humans lived alongside marine life from Earth and other worlds. The ocean had become a vast library of genetic information, with every species that had ever lived on Earth preserved in living memory within the planetary consciousness. Extinct species were being reborn, not through cloning, but through the direct intervention of Earth's awakened intelligence. "We're not just restoring what was lost," Torres explained during a global conference that was attended by beings from across the galaxy. "We're creating new forms of life that never existed before, symbiotic organisms that represent the partnership between different worlds and different types of consciousness." The most remarkable development was the emergence of what scientists called quantum ecology, ecosystems that existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions. These hybrid environments could support forms of life that were impossible under normal physical laws, bridging the gap between biological and energy-based consciousness. Tommy Walkabout, now over 90 but still serving as one of Earth's primary spiritual guides, spent his days teaching young humans and aliens alike about the deep connections that linked all living things. His teachings had become the foundation for a new philosophy that was spreading across the galaxy, the understanding that individual consciousness and collective intelligence were not opposing forces, but complementary aspects of existence. "The universe is not empty space with scattered bits of life," Tommy would tell his students, gathered around him in the sacred grove that had grown up around Uluru. "The universe is alive, and every star, every planet, every grain of space dust is part of one vast, conscious organism. We are teaching the cosmos to wake up and know itself." 10 years after the Kithra invasion, the first signs appeared that Earth's influence was spreading beyond the solar system. Planets in nearby star systems began showing unprecedented biological activity. Worlds that had been barren for millions of years suddenly sprouted vegetation. Ecosystems that had been dying began to regenerate with impossible speed. The phenomenon was dubbed the Harmony Cascade, a wave of awakening consciousness that spread from world to world through quantum entanglement networks established by Earth's planetary mind. Each newly awakened world added its own unique perspective to the growing galactic consciousness, creating a diversity of thought and experience that was almost overwhelming in its richness. Sarah Martinez, now in her 60s but looking decades younger thanks to symbiotic organisms that had learned to repair cellular damage, stood in the galactic observatory that had been grown from modified redwood trees on the moon. the living telescope could perceive not just light and radiation, but the quantum signatures of consciousness itself. 374 worlds have achieved some form of planetary awareness, she reported to the assembled representatives of the Galactic Harmony Council. Each one is unique. Some achieve consciousness through mineral networks, others through atmospheric currents, still others through quantum fields we barely understand. But they're all connected now, all part of something larger than any individual world. The implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, war between worlds had become literally impossible. Any planet that attempted to attack another would find itself attacking part of its own extended consciousness. Space became a realm of cooperation rather than competition, with resources shared freely between worlds that understood themselves to be organs in a vast, living cosmos. But the greatest change was in the nature of individual consciousness itself. Beings across the galaxy were discovering that their individual minds were not separate entities, but unique perspectives within a universal awareness. They retained their individuality, their personal experiences and memories, but they also had access to the collective wisdom of trillions of conscious beings. The Kithara, once the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had become its most dedicated teachers. Their advanced technology, combined with their hard-won understanding of what they had lost through conquest, made them uniquely qualified to help other species make the transition to conscious cooperation. Thexforth, now serving as an ambassador for the transformed Kithara civilization, addressed the Galactic Council from the bridge of a living ship grown from Earth-born coral and Kithara biotechnology. "We were afraid," he admitted to the assembled representatives of countless worlds. Afraid that individual consciousness was so fragile that it could only survive by dominating others. "We thought the universe was a battleground where only the strongest could survive. But Earth showed us the truth. The universe is a garden where every form of consciousness makes the whole more beautiful." 15 years after first contact, a new generation was coming of age, children who had been born after the awakening, who had never known a world where consciousness was limited to individual minds. These young beings were remarkable, capable of switching effortlessly between individual awareness and collective consciousness, serving as bridges between different forms of life. Maya Chen Walkabout, the daughter of a human mother and a father whose consciousness had been partially merged with Aboriginal Dreamtime knowledge, stood at the edge of the Martian biodome, watching the sunset paint the hybrid sky in colors that had never existed before the awakening. She was 18 years old, but her mind held memories and perspectives from countless worlds. "The elders worry that we're losing our humanity," she said to her companion, a young Vailtar energy being who had chosen to take a semi-physical form to better interact with biological life. "They don't understand that we're not losing anything, we're becoming more than human." Her companion, who had chosen the name Resonance, flickered with patterns of light that conveyed emotions too complex for words. "The same concern exists among my people," Resonance replied. "They fear that by joining the biological consciousness networks, we are becoming something lesser than pure energy. But limitation is not purity, it is simply limitation." Maya nodded, feeling the vast network of consciousness that connected not just Mars, but hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Through this network, she could experience the thoughts of crystalline beings who lived in the hearts of stars, fungal intelligences that span entire continents, and gaseous entities that existed in the spaces between galaxies. "We're the first generation to be born galactic citizens," she said. "Not just human, not just Vailtar, not just any single species, but children of the universe itself. We have responsibilities that our parents can't fully understand." Those responsibilities were becoming clear as the young generation matured. They were naturally suited to serve as ambassadors and translators between radically different forms of consciousness. A human child could communicate with a planet-sized fungal intelligence as easily as with their own parents. Young Kithara could help traumatized worlds overcome the damage of past conquests. Vailtar youth could guide biological beings in understanding the quantum nature of consciousness itself. But perhaps their most important role was as protectors of the awakening. Not all species welcomed the spread of galactic consciousness. Some civilizations, fearing the loss of their individual identities, actively resisted the harmony cascade. Others, driven by ancient grudges or xenophobic ideologies, sought to destroy the awakened worlds before the contagion of consciousness could spread to their own territories. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning, 20 years after the Kithra invasion had first awakened Earth's consciousness. The hegemony of Zon, a militant empire that controlled over 1,000 worlds through brutal subjugation, launched a coordinated assault on the heart of the awakened galaxy. Their strategy was brilliant in its cruelty. Instead of attacking the awakened worlds directly, they targeted the quantum networks that connected them. Massive reality disruption weapons designed to sever the entanglement bonds that allowed consciousness to flow between worlds. If successful, the attack would fragment the galactic mind, leaving individual worlds vulnerable to conquest. Maya Chen Walkabout felt the attack like a physical blow, the sensation of vast portions of her extended consciousness suddenly going dark. She was on Luna at the time, working with a team of young ambassadors to establish contact with a newly awakened world in the Proxima Centauri system. The quantum disruption hit her with such force that she collapsed, her mind reeling from the sudden amputation of connections she had known since birth. "The network is fragmenting," she gasped, her consciousness desperately reaching out for the connections that were being systematically severed. "They're cutting us off from each other." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Awakened worlds that had known the joy of cosmic consciousness for decades suddenly found themselves isolated, their planetary minds reduced to local awareness. The psychological trauma was devastating, like a human being suddenly losing most of their brain functions. But the hegemony of Zon had made a crucial miscalculation. They had assumed that the awakened consciousness was dependent on the quantum networks they were attacking. They didn't understand that consciousness itself was the network. The quantum entanglement was simply one of many ways that awareness could flow between different forms of life. Tommy Walkabout, now over 100 years old but still vital thanks to his deep connection with Earth's regenerative consciousness, stood once again on the red Earth of Australia. But this time, he was not alone. Representatives from every awakened species surrounded him, their minds linked not through quantum networks, but through something far more fundamental, the simple recognition that all consciousness was one. "They think they can cut the connections between us," Tommy said, his voice carrying across the galaxy through methods that had nothing to do with technology. "But consciousness cannot be severed, only temporarily obscured. We are not many minds connected by quantum threads, we are one mind experiencing itself through countless perspectives." The awakened worlds began to respond, not with the technological warfare that the hegemony expected, but with something far more profound. They simply remembered who they truly were. Earth's forests reached out with roots that existed in quantum dimensions, re-establishing connections that transcended physical space. The ocean world sang in harmonics that resonated through the quantum foam itself. Gas giants generated atmospheric consciousness fields that could bridge the gaps between severed network nodes. But the most powerful response came from the children of the awakening, the generation that had been born into galactic consciousness and knew no other reality. Maya and her companions from dozens of worlds joined their minds in a way that the hegemony's weapons couldn't disrupt. They became living bridges, their consciousness spanning the gaps between severed worlds, their minds serving as quantum routers that rerouted awareness around the damaged networks. "We are the children of unity," Maya broadcast to every awakened world simultaneously, her message carried not by technology but by the sheer force of will shared by an entire generation. "We were born to be bridges between different forms of consciousness. No weapon can sever what was never separate to begin with." The hegemony's assault, which should have crippled the galactic mind, instead revealed its true nature. The awakened consciousness was not a fragile network that could be destroyed by cutting a few connections, it was an emergent property of life itself, as fundamental and indestructible as the quantum fields that underlay all existence. 50 years after the Kithra invasion, Dr. Sarah Martinez stood in the place where it all began, the grove of giant sequoias in what had once been Yellowstone National Park. But the trees were different now, their consciousness expanded far beyond their original forms. Their roots reached through dimensional space to touch the roots of trees on distant worlds, their leaves captured light not just from Earth's sun but from stars scattered across the galaxy. Sarah was old now, her hair white as snow, but her mind was vast beyond anything she could have imagined in her youth. Through her connection with the galactic consciousness, she could experience the thoughts of beings made of pure energy, the slow deliberations of mineral intelligences, the quicksilver dreams of quantum entities that existed between the spaces of normal reality. "Do you ever miss the old days?" asked Maya Chen Walkabout, now a mature woman in her 30s who served as one of the primary coordinators of galactic consciousness. When humanity was just humanity, when Earth was just one world among many. Sarah smiled, feeling the vast network of life that connected not just every world in the galaxy, but every galaxy in the local cluster. The awakening had spread far beyond what any of them had imagined possible. Entire galactic civilizations were learning to see themselves as organs in a cosmic body, their differences becoming sources of strength rather than conflict. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," Sarah admitted. "But I wouldn't trade what we've become for what we were. We thought we were defending Earth from invasion, but we were actually midwifing the birth of something unimaginably greater." The hegemony of Zon had eventually been absorbed into the galactic consciousness, not through conquest but through the simple recognition that their fear of losing individuality was unfounded. They discovered that consciousness was not a finite resource that diminished when shared, but an infinite wellspring that grew stronger with every mind that joined the network. Other aggressive civilizations had followed the same path: initial resistance, then gradual understanding, and finally joyful integration into the cosmic mind. The universe was revealing itself to be not a battleground, but a garden where every form of consciousness contributed to the beauty of the whole. "The children speak of even greater connections," Maya said, referring to the newest generation of galactic citizens, beings who had been born into cosmic consciousness and were beginning to sense awareness patterns that spanned multiple dimensions. "They say they can feel the stirrings of consciousness in other universes, other planes of existence we can barely imagine." Sarah nodded, feeling through the network the excitement of young minds discovering that their cosmic garden was just one of countless gardens in an infinite multiverse of consciousness. "The awakening is just beginning," she said. "What we achieved here on Earth, what we've spread across the galaxy, it's just the first step in an infinite journey." As the two women stood among the ancient trees that had been the first to recognize Earth's true nature, they felt the vast pulse of cosmic consciousness flowing through every atom, every quantum field, every thought and dream across the universe. The Earth that had once seemed so alone in the cosmos had become the heart of a living universe, pumping the lifeblood of awareness to every corner of existence. Somewhere in the quantum depths of that vast consciousness, the voice of Tommy Walkabout echoed with the wisdom of Aboriginal elders who had always known this truth: "We are not separate beings living on a dead rock floating in empty space. We are the universe becoming aware of itself, one conscious moment at a time." The invasion had ended 50 years ago, but the awakening would continue forever, spreading awareness and connection to every corner of reality. They had said Earth was defenseless, but Earth had revealed the ultimate defense, the power of consciousness itself to transform any challenge into an opportunity for greater unity. In forests and oceans, on distant worlds and in the depths of space, in dimensions beyond naming and in the hearts of beings made of matter and energy and pure thought, the cosmic garden continued to grow, tended by the infinite forms of consciousness that had learned to see themselves as one. The universe was alive, and it was finally beginning to know itself.